Now, I have the pleasure to introduce Tim Shurr. I know Tim Shurr. I've known him for a long time. He might not want to acknowledge that, but I've known him for a while. So I can tell you how delighted I am to introduce him. He's an alumni of IU Northwest, which is really exciting. Of course, he got his degree in psychology. We'll forgive him for that, but that's okay. He's an alumni, so that's exciting. And he's from the region, which is exciting too. We do produce the best and the brightest, and so it's just a delight to do this. You know, we've gotten speakers from all over, and the last one was from Texas, but it's exciting today to have one of our own, which is really fun. Tim Shurr, he's the president of Shurr Success. Sounds like a real exciting place to go, right? It's a personal development company, and he's based in Indianapolis now. He's an award-winning speaker, peak performance coach, and internationally expert in nonverbal communication. He spent 20 years helping individuals and companies make extraordinary breakthroughs by transforming the way we think. He can be seen and heard regularly on Fox News, CBS, WISH-TV, if you're, those from Indianapolis, and radio shows around the country. His clients have included Verizon, NCAA, Amway, Wells Fargo Advisors, and I think we have some people from Wells Fargo here today, Century 21, and Kiwanis International. Tim has written 4 books, which will be available at the end of the program, and that table back there, 27. He has some interesting CDs and books back there, so feel free after it's over, go back and say hi to Tim and peruse the books and see if anything's interested to you. Just save one for me, because I read his book before and I know it's good. And he's a graduate of the IU Northwest class in 1993. Today he's here to share how good companies become great, which sounds like an exciting topic to me. Will you please welcome Tim Shurr?
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. Do me a quick favor. Look over to the person next to you and say, "Wow, you're looking good." Every chance you get to help somebody feel good about themselves, seize it. Every chance you get to help someone feel brighter and happier and they feel better because you were around them, take advantage of that. Our program today is on maximizing human potential, and that's really about shining, being the best that we can be, and then helping others shine as well. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here, which is interesting. Because I am from the region. I grew up in a little small town. You might have heard of it, Hobart, Indiana. Yeah. And which is fun that I say that and you guys have actually heard of it, which is cool. And but I had something happen to me that was a turning point when I was 12 years old. My dad worked at the mill and my mom took care of us. And when I was 12, I got one of those phone calls that you never want to hear. You really don't want to get. And the phone rang. My mom was at the grocery store, and so I pick up the phone and I go, "Hello," and she says, "Honey, is your mom there? We need to find her. There's been an accident." And my dad was an electrician, so he was at the mill and he was working on this great big electrical box. And his buddy Bill was in there with the flashlight, and the box didn't get tagged properly, which is how I ended up doing safety seminars. But it didn't get tagged, and so while my dad was in there and Bill was with his flashlight, someone turned it on and kind of exploded. So he got burned real bad, ended up in Loyola burn unit, and I ended up moving in with my grandparents, and I won't share all the terrible details about it, but I will tell you the good news. The good news is that he made it. And even though he was full of scars on the outside, he's the first person to take off his shirt and go swimming. And I don't remember him really complaining much, except once where he had to have another hand surgery. His hand didn't quite open all the way, and he complained a little bit. But here's a guy that still doesn't have most of his fingernails, and yet he doesn't seem to complain about it. And I remember that when I get stuck in traffic, or I have another deadline, and I remind myself, okay, and I start to shift out of that. But it left me with a lot of scars on the inside. I discovered that instead of playing to win in life, I was playing not to lose. I was waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I was caught up in worry and stress. And I soon discovered that I wasn't the only one. And so I had my first class on psychology in high school. And I thought, wow, this could help me figure things out. So I got hooked on it. And then I went to IUN and continued my studies in psychology. And then I realized that I wanted to find every kind of peak performance tool, strategy there was to help people feel good right now. Right now. If medication and counseling wasn't cutting it, what could you do to help someone shift that kind of tension right here, right now? And so I spent the next 25 years learning every kind of tool from neuro-linguistic programming to hypnotherapy to EMDR and EFT and all these other initials, and I got really good at it. And so I started lecturing around. I had the opportunity to lecture from coast to coast and in Europe, and a lot of my clients were coming in. I had to practice for 10 years in the Twin Towers next door, and people were coming in. They were CEOs, they were sales managers, VPs, and they started saying, hey, can you get my people to pick up the phone? How do you motivate people? How do you get people to live our values? And so that brought me into corporate America. And that was an interesting thing. I thought, what is a small town kid going to do with these $100 million companies? And so I started out with sales training because I got really good at being able to read nonverbal communication, body language, and teach people how to do that as well. Because I find that human beings are a bit self-absorbed. We're kind of traveling around in our own head thinking about all these things that we have to do all the time, right? If you're not quite sure if you buy into that, take a drive. You'll find real quick how people are absorbed, especially now with the phones and the texting and everything else. And what happens is we miss the hidden opportunities that are around us all the time to be able to connect with others. People are really good at communicating, but not as good at connecting. When it comes to networking, I usually call it not working, because it's the same kind of, so how's the weather? How you doing? Oh, here's business cards. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but thanks, I have it. People are really good at talking, not as good at listening. And so I started teaching these sales trainings and then customer service, and then it kind of morphed into transforming cultures. And so today's talk is on how to transform the culture in our own minds so that we can start to make that difference in the workplace, because we're going to spend a third of our lives working. We might as well enjoy it. We might as well create some happiness and some joy. But I find that when I'm in a building, when I first thought, what am I going to do with the company, I realized it's just a house full of people. And I'm pretty good at shifting behavior, limiting beliefs. And so I want to share some of the things that I've learned from this, especially for the students that are in here. Okay? But I want to start with a story. There's these 4 philanthropists, and they're in this town. And the town gets taken over by some enemies. And they come into town, and they take the whole place over, and they take all the young boys and men, and they put them in these terrible prisons. Well, one of the philanthropists said, I'm not comfortable with this. I have to do something about it. So they go up to the guards, and they try to bribe them. And the one philanthropist says, you know what, I've got these clean wells full of water. Take them. But just give our men some clean water so they have something to drink. They're drinking this dirty water. They're getting sick. And so the guard said, okay, fine. So now these men were drinking clean water in their prisons. And then the next philanthropist said, well, I want in on this. And so they went up to the guards and they said, hey, I've got these fields of grain. Take them. But just give our men some bread so they have something to eat. They're starving. They said, okay. And so they have clean water and they have bread, so at least they're eating now in their prisons. And the third philanthropist said, well, I want to make a difference too. And so he went up to the guards and said, you know what, I have these textile mills, and I want to give them to you if you just give them some blankets. They're laying on the ground and they're freezing. And they said, okay. So now they have their blanket as well. So they're eating and drinking and they have their blanket in their prisons. But the fourth philanthropist was the one that was the wisest of them all, and decided that this was not how it should be. And so that night, in the middle of the night, he went up to the guards and bribed them with some cash and got the keys and went up to those prison doors and unlocked those doors and set the men free. See, the point in life, ladies and gentlemen, is not to learn how to get comfortable in our mental prisons, but to learn that we have the keys in our pocket. And through personal development, we can unlock those mental gates and set ourselves free. Our mental gates are fear, stress, worry, anxiety. Raise your hand if you ever lost sleep worrying about something. How do we start to shift that? Because stress does not happen out there, although it seems like it. Stress happens in here. It's not what happens, it's how we interpret it that matters more than anything else. So how do we stay resourceful? How do we keep ourselves feeling calm under pressure? How do we feel good enough inside so that we don't have to make it about ourselves anymore, so we can make it about those around us, so that we really are able to shine and then step back and help others shine? So when I got into the business world, I started noticing what was going on, and I want to take you on a quick little journey with me. Okay? So, reaching the summit, why maximizing human potential is your greatest competitive advantage, because at the end of the day, it's the people that make the difference. Not just the product, not just your marketing, not just your sales. And so when you first go into a company, you're at base camp, and you decide, hey, we've got a quality product, we've got great service, and we've got affordable pricing. That sounds wonderful until you realize that everybody else is saying the exact same thing. So how do you stand out then? Well, then you begin to focus in on your product development. How do I find a better product? How do I find what people need? How do I improve on that? Let's get our organizational structure intact so we get the right people in the right positions, and if they're not in the right positions, we're going to have the courage to do something about it instead of just kind of hoping it works out on its own. We start with our workflow systems and our operational excellence, and then we start to work on improving our marketing, our sales, and our customer service. So we're working on the external. Something that I learned from living in Indianapolis are racing metaphors. And so here's my racing metaphor for you. Okay? What happens when you put all your money into the car and no money into the driver? You put the car in the wall. And that's what companies tend to do. We tend to focus on marketing, we tend to focus on our systems, we tend to focus on our software, but we forget to focus on really developing our greatest asset, which is our people. It's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here today, because IUN puts so much energy and focus on developing great people. So here's the great divide. Here's what I've noticed that happens. There's a lot of wonderful companies out there, but there's this split that happens. And let me just kind of map it out for you. When you develop your people, when you provide emotional intelligence training, which is you help people understand what's driving them from behind the scenes. You help people understand what the beliefs are in their unconscious mind that are causing them to think the way that they think, to behave the way that they behave. Are they choosing how to respond in life, or are they constantly reacting to whatever's happening in the moment? Are they focusing on how they can be a part of a team, or are they always focused on themselves? How do you begin to create that self-awareness and start to shift people? Because when people have a greater care for themselves, they start to have a greater care for other people as well. And that becomes your competitive advantage. So when you develop that, because that is something you have to learn how to do. Zig Ziglar said that the greatest learning sometimes happen after school, after you get out. If you don't go into higher education like IUN and you just get out of high school, then what you have left is whatever your parents knew. And you just pass it along. He says they don't, unless you go and seek it out, you don't learn how to set really good goals and how to make sure that you're following through on them and how to avoid distractions and how to get up continually when you get knocked down. One of my favorite quotes from Les Brown, he says, when you get knocked down and you're going to get knocked down, then fall on your back. Because if you can fall on your back, you can see up. If you can see up, you can get up. Hallelujah. And I'm like, whoa, okay? So I'm like, oh, preach on, right? And so I realized that that's exactly what it's all about. Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, don't stop. Just keep going. And Dory in Finding Nemo, she says, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. We have to learn how to do that through the School of Hard Knocks. So when you start to develop your emotional education, which is your self-awareness, your empathy, your drive, how to stay focused, how to care about those around you, how to be part of a team. When you start to develop your verbal and your nonverbal communication skills, and I'll talk about some of these in a minute, it really is incredible when you start to notice and realize that 55% of communication is nonverbal. Your body language and your facial expressions speak so much louder, I can't even hear the words you're using and what you're saying. And do you even know what your facial expressions look like? Probably not, because it's your face. My coach used to tell me, Tim, it's hard to see the label when you're in the bottle. That makes a lot of sense. So increasing that self-awareness by having heart-to-heart conversations. I always do small groups and then big groups, and we have these conversations, and it's amazing what comes out of them because people are just having honest conversations. But honest conversations don't usually occur in corporate America because of all the worry and fear and stress. So, I find that people tend to be quite resistant to change. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah. So let's just make a deal with each other. It's just us. Okay? So let's make a deal. Let's just decide that we're going to be open to change. And we'll think of change as an opportunity. Okay? Would you all agree to be open to change with me? Did you hear the response? The whole half of the room was like, what kind of change? It just happened again. Okay? So let's take it a step further. Because I've also learned that people don't change with information. People don't change just because they have new awareness. People change from having emotional experiences. From having an experience that shifts the way that they think and feel. So I want to help you have an experience right here, right now. So if you could, I'd like you to stand up. And you're going to get with a partner. Teams of 2. And we're going to play a little game. People are already going, what is this crap all about? So here are your instructions. We're going to increase your sensory acuity, which means we're going to see how well you pay attention to what's going on around you. All right, so you're going to go ahead and you're going to, now my HR people always go, what? Okay, but you're going to go ahead and you're going to check your partner out. Okay, very good. All right, that's enough. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and turn your back to your partner. Face away from your partner. That's right, good. Now, here's your instructions. I would like you to go ahead and change 3 things about your physical appearance. I will repeat it. I would like you to go ahead and change 3 things about your physical appearance. Once you have changed 3 things about your physical appearance, I would like you to turn back and see if you can figure out what your partner changed. Begin. instructions. 2 simple instructions. I'd like you to do exactly as I asked. Exactly as I asked. Okay, 2 simple instructions. I want you to thank your partner and sit down. So this is a little exercise on change, okay? So let's review real quick. Let's review. So we talked about agreeing to be open to change. And change means getting out of our comfort zone. It means recognizing that there's your habits of what you're used to doing. Your breakthrough is going to be right over here. And so sometimes you have to leave that familiar comfort zone to find your next opportunity. So you got to stretch. Lao Tzu once said you got to go out on a limb because that's where the fruit is. Zig Ziglar said that ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what they're built for. And neither are you. So we go out on a limb. So we're going to agree to be open to change. Then I say, all right, stand up. Good, find a partner. And I hear everybody go, ugh. Okay? Then I say, great, now we're going to go ahead and change 3 things about your physical appearance. And what was your first reaction? That's right. Oh, boy. Then I asked you to change. I had the nerve to ask you to change 3 more things about your physical appearance. And what was the reaction then? What? That's impossible. I don't know what to change. I can't think of anything. And that's often the response that people have under pressure. I can't think of anything. I don't know what to do. It's impossible. Under pressure, our brain gets squeezed and we start to think very narrowly. Now your opportunity might be right here. And if you can learn to get resourceful and open your mind, you'll see resources and breakthroughs and opportunities that have always been here. The word nowhere and now here is the same letters. It's just where you put the space. Okay? Yeah, impossible, if you just underline the first 2 letters, becomes I'm possible. I got a million of those. So we become resistant. Did any of you happen, if you weren't sure what to do, to look around and see what others are doing? We forget to do that. Remember that self-absorption thing I had mentioned? Because under pressure, we put all this pressure on ourselves to figure it out. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that we make as human beings, because look at the talent in this room. Look at the brain power that's in this room. You have made a difference in one way or another for you to be in this room. Imagine what you could do if we really did work together to be able to cause things in this world and in your own world. That's what the networking should really be about. Figuring out what our talents are and helping each other instead of trying to figure out what we can get. Right? As they say in B&I, givers gain. So then, something else interesting happens. So I gave you 2 instructions at the very end. Right? Thank your partner and sit down. Cool. So, how many of you then proceeded to put yourself back together the way that you were before you started the exercise? If you did that, raise your hand and look around. Almost everybody. Right? That is one of the big things that I learned with working with humans. Even when you go through an experience, and even when you tell yourself that you're going to be open to change, you'll go through an experience, and then we go right back to how we were before it started. And you'll remember that now because you went through it, and I didn't just talk about it. It wasn't just on a slide. You just experienced going right back. As smart as you are. Because human beings are creatures of habit. And so we end up going right back. And it's interesting. So when you take a rubber band and you stretch it, and you release it, it goes flying across the room, it hits the floor, and it takes on the same shape again. What we have to do is we have to keep stretching ourselves until we hold the new form. And when we hold the new form, we have a new possibility. And that's what emotional intelligence is really about. That's what personal development is really about. It's about stretching ourselves consistently so that we take on that new form. so that we shine brighter. So when we start to look at those things, and we do that with the verbal and nonverbal communication training, we'll do that with active listening. We're really paying attention to what people are saying. We're listening for the meaning behind the words. We're developing our profiling aptitude, and that's just a fancy way of saying being able to read people. Being able to know there's about 4 different personalities. Do you know how to motivate each one? Do you have a strategy for causing any one of those personalities to like you within 90 seconds or less? Do you know how to cause rapport? Most people just kind of wing it and smile and do the old Dale Carnegie, right? Which is great, but there are better ways. Okay, so what happens if a company does not develop their people in this kind of way? What happens is we start to have all the problems that are pretty consistent in business. From high turnover, to negative energy in the workplace, to people sending out disrespectful emails and CCing everybody. People have such a hard time being straightforward and honest, even with texting these days. People go all the way around what they really want to say, and then at the end they put LOL instead of feeling connected. So you'll have lower employee satisfaction survey scores or customer satisfaction survey scores, and it just goes on and on from silos. I've seen a lot of silos between finance and sales, for example, and everybody's convinced that the whole goal is to wreck each other's day. And of course, that's not it at all, right? Or that you don't understand how busy I am. But they are too. It's what we call self-deception. Self-deception is we are part of the problem and we don't realize we're part of the problem. So I see this all the time. People will, you ever seen people driving and one person's riding somebody else, right? And then they go whipping around the car and then they put on the brakes, you know, and everybody is disrespecting everybody else, right? Instead of just kind of go ahead. So being able to train ourselves on how to care for that other person, how to be aware of these things, how to decide to be the cause in our life instead of the effect of it. I mean, you want to be the baseball or you want to be the baseball bat. So, and when you start to understand that, you realize even when I was working for, doing healthcare programs for, IU School of Medicine or Riverview Hospital, healthcare, they're talking about lawsuits. The doctors that have rapport, now they might only have 3 minutes with their patient, but the ones that have those people skills never get sued. It's the ones that don't. Oh, they're smart, they're analytical, they'll go in there and they'll work on you like a mechanic to a car. But there's more than just our physical body. We want a connection, especially when we're scared. So it's really powerful, and I'm excited that companies are starting to change that around. They're really interested on how to create a culture of engagement. And a culture of engagement just means that employees feel validated, they feel appreciated, they feel cared for. And the millennials these days are calling up HR directors and saying, what's your culture like? You know, and they have to lie, say it's good. No. No, there are a lot of great cultures out there. Jim Collins wrote a classic book, Good to Great. And the difference is in developing the people, right? So it comes back to the basics. It comes back to the basics. So I was telling Anna, my friends will say, what do you do when you go to those big companies? And I say, I just teach manners, right? I just go in and remind people to care about each other. So I just dress it up in some fun games and savvy ways. And it's pretty cool. And what happens when you do that is you get back up the mountain and you become a values-based organization. And a cool thing about that is that managers and supervisors and even the people in the C-suites, they start to become transformational leaders instead of just transactional trying to get the job done. They're really focusing on lifting people up and getting to know them better. So they start to evaluate people and create programs for them where they're judged not just on the performance and how well you do the job, but how well you live the values. It becomes an equal part of it, which is pretty amazing. Changing self-awareness, empathy, innovation, nonverbal communication skills. Employees and customers, employees start to become customer-focused. They start to really care. What's your opinion on customer service these days in general, as consumers? Not very good. Poor. Yeah. And it's unfortunate I remember walking into like a Best Buy, and you know, the guys on the floor are great, but the people behind the counter. I remember one time I walked in and I had a quick question, and somebody walks up to me, and I could see they were in a hurry, and they walk up and they go, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I was teaching a lot of customer service training. I'm like, "That's a story I can tell." I'm still telling it. I went into a Home Depot one time, and you know, and you can tell if people are employee or customer focused, because some people you walk in, I'll say, "Hey, where are the pencils?" And I'm like, "Down there, okay, then over on the left, and down to the bottom." Yeah. Okay, and then you go look for someone else, right? So, unless you're an achiever, right? And then you just power walk, so you move with purpose until you find it on your own. I know you Thai Bayers are in here. Yeah, there you go. But I remember walking into Home Depot, and I said, "Hey, where are the pencils?" And this guy stands up, and he must have been a graduate of IUM, because he stands up. You're welcome. He stands up. He stands up and he says, "Oh, the pencils, my friend. Let me help you find them. So come with me." He said, "How's your day, my friend?" And we're just walking around. I said, "Oh, it's doing pretty good." He's like, "Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful. So what are you going to use these pencils for? We want to make sure you get exactly what you need, or we're not going to spend any money." And I'm like, "Well, all right." You know? And then he took me over to the pencils, and we had this conversation, and he kept calling me his friend, and I swear by the end of it, I was. The words we use are very powerful. Very powerful. You know, the words you use create chemical reactions in the brain. And those chemical reactions lead to what we call feelings and emotions. So the words you use are causing feelings inside of people. And you might not realize it, but you're impacting people all the time, just being around them. So when people leave your presence, do they feel taller or smaller? You have an opportunity all the time to lift others up. And just the being reminded of it will make you a lot nicer when you leave here today. Because it becomes top of mind again. Because it's so easy to leave here, and then your phone's ringing, you got texts, you got emails, you got all these things in this little box that remind you how busy you are. And that's when sometimes we have to take that deep breath in, slow it back down. Take a deep breath in with me. You're going to breathe in through your nose, down to your belly. Take twice as long to breathe out. In this moment of doing that, you just regained your freedom. The freedom to choose how to respond in any moment. Taking a breath and slowing down makes you very resourceful. It puts you back in control again. But most of the time, we forget to breathe. For some people, I just write "breathe" on a Post-it note and put it everywhere, just to remind them. So being able to shift some of these things is really important. And it just makes a big difference in the way that you feel. So it causes people to feel intrinsically motivated. Intrinsic motivation just means people feel appreciated. And when people feel validated and appreciated, they want to give back. It causes reciprocity debt. They want to make a difference. You know, it reminds me of this gentleman named John, and he was working on the railroad, and he was banging on these railroad ties, and he had been at the company for a long time. And they had this boxcar, it was real nice, air-conditioned, and he hears this voice, "John, is that you?" And he's like, "Yeah, Dave, it's me." He's like, "John, come on in here." All his buddies are like, "Isn't that the president of the railroad? How do you know him?" John just like, and he puts the hammer down, goes into the boxcar, disappears for about an hour, comes back out, picks up his hammer, starts hammering away again. And his buddies rush him, and they're like, "Hey, how do you know him? How does he know you?" And he said, "Well, interesting story." He says, 20 years ago, Dave and I joined the railroad at the same time. And they said, "Well, why are you here?" And he's in there. And he says, "Because I showed up for a paycheck, and Dave showed up for a purpose. He showed up to make a difference for the railroad." So when you feel cared for and you show up thinking, how can I contribute? What can I cause? How can I be the cause? One of my favorite quotes is, if you want to see something in the world, be it. If you want to get something, give it. You want more love? Be more loving. You want more friends? Be a friend of more people. And as you do that, and as you remind yourself to take the time, I'll tell you, the most important gift you can give people in the 21st century is your full presence, your full attention. How many times, because you got so much going on, someone comes in and wants to talk to you, and you're like, yeah, what's up? What do you need? Okay, all right. No, I'm listening. When you just stop and give someone your full present, it's okay. Right? When you just stop and you make eye contact with somebody and you give someone your full presence, it makes a difference. Where'd you go? There you are. You had the same reaction I had at a Starbucks one time. There was a line and everybody's busy in a Starbucks because they're trying to get somewhere, right? And so there was a guy behind the counter and he was passing out these lattes and I just paused and I looked him right in the eye and I said, hey, thanks so much. I appreciate what you're doing. You know, you're doing a great job for everybody. And he literally went like this. Because you just don't know how many times a day do you get stopped by someone who takes the time to validate you and appreciate you. Does that happen a lot? Do you get stopped a lot where people are going, you're so wonderful, I just really appreciate you? Does that happen all the time? Has it become a nuisance? Yeah. Everywhere I go, it doesn't matter where. People are like, yeah, no, that usually doesn't happen. And then if we're not given it, we usually aren't. If we're not getting it, we forget to give it as well. Or we get resentful because we feel like we're always giving, and we're not getting it back. And it's one of the challenges that I found when we're little. We try to just figure out what our role is in the family. And then we figure out what that role is, and we figure out how to communicate that role. And then we get taller, and then we go into work, and we recreate the same dynamics. We just create different families. So Virginia Satir was a very famous family and marriage therapist. Really, you could sit down with her, she'd start asking you questions, and all of a sudden it would seem like your big problems got really tiny. And so she said that there's 5 ways that we learn to communicate when we're little. And 4 of them are dysfunctional, and then 1 is the way that we want to try to get to. And so instead of sharing them with you, guess what we're going to do? We're going to act them out. If you could please stand up. You'll be good at this, trust me. So Jenny said that, there's these 5 ways to communicate. And she said the first way, no particular order. She says the first way is the placater. Okay, so I want you to hold your hands together like this and hold them up like we're going to be on one knee. And I want you to repeat after me. I only live for you. I don't matter. I don't matter. Okay, now there's another way of doing this. Go like this. Okay? No matter what I do. No matter what I do. It's never good enough. It's never good enough. Oh, you guys are good at that one. Okay, so. All right, now that's the placater. And what she says, yeah, we're going to be on for just a little bit. Okay, so if you need to sit down, you can, but I encourage you to stand up. So Jenny would say that that's the placater. The placater doesn't want to rock the boat. Wants to make sure that everybody else is okay except themselves, right? So they end up hurt or passive aggressive. So another way of a placater will be, go ahead and repeat after me, everything's fine. Yeah, when you know it's not. Okay? So the placater is always just trying to make sure everybody else is okay, but ends up having hurt feelings. The second type of communication is what we call the blamer. Okay, now placaters and blamers usually get married. All right? So the blamer goes like this. I want you to point, but not at me and not at each other. Okay, but just point and repeat after me. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. It's all you. It's all you. Okay, so that's a blamer. So I'm sure you've either done that or been pointed at one time and another. So it all comes back to insecurity. Human beings have that little small seed of insecurity. We're just hoping that we're enough, that we're good enough. And if we doubt it, all the worries and fears and rejection and all the self-sabotage comes from that fear of not being good enough. And so the blamer wants to make sure that it's everybody else because they're in the must be seen as box. Right? I must be seen as responsible or in charge or the smart one or whatever role they picked up when they were younger. So that's the blamer. The third one is called the distractor, which more and more people are getting good at these days. So the distractor is trying to go in 20 different directions at once. Looks like this. Okay? So let's go ahead and try it. Let's see what you look like. Go! Hey, yeah, you got it. I like it. Good, good. Okay, so the distractor decides that if we ignore it, it will go away on its own. So let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, when you sweep things under the rug, does that work? No. Yeah, it makes it worse. Some of you have mountains with a rug on top. So that doesn't work. I've met people that have grudges over some silly thing that was said from 20 years ago. Right? And they hold on to it. Well, we have whole countries that do that. Okay, so what we need to do is recognize it so that we can start to shift it. The fourth level of communication is what we call the computer. Okay? So the computer, what happens is the computer disappears into the left side of their brain and does not come out. So I want you to go like this and repeat after me. Just the facts, just the facts. None of that touchy-feely crap. Okay? So you'll slip into your intellect because emotions feel icky and we don't want to connect. But if you're guarding your heart, no one can connect with your heart. Right? And so we want to, yeah, the ones of you that are smiling real big right now. Okay? So, and then we get to the fifth one. And this is the one, because we've all done all of these. We've all done all of them. But we want to get to the fifth one. And the fifth one is called the leveler. And the leveler goes like this. So put your arms out. And please repeat after me. This is who I am. And I am enough. I am already good. That's right. Don't just lip it. I'm watching you right there. Okay? And if you need something in your leveling, say, this is what I need. And if you can help me, great. And if you can't, that's okay. I will find my way. Amen. Hallelujah. All right. All right. Now, let's play a little game. This side of the room right here, you're going to go ahead and be the placator. Okay? This little group right here, all the way back, you're going to be the blamers. This group over here, you're going to go ahead and be the distractors. This little segment over here, you guys, if you're not sure, just do one. You're going to go ahead and be the computer, okay? And you guys over here on the end, you're going to be the levelers. When I say go, I want you to act it out and face the whole room. Okay, let's see what it's like. 1, 2, 3, go! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Corporate America. Give yourself a round of applause and have some. So, once you get past the resistance to change and to new opportunities, then you start to work with the communication strategies and what's going on inside of people. Because you can give people, and I'm sure you've had this experience, the best business plan in the world and they still don't use it. You can give them all the tools and resources and they won't follow through with it. People are saying all the time, how do I motivate the unmotivated? This is how. You start to get in and understand what they really value, what really drives people, what matters most to them. You know, a powerful question is just, so what matters most to you about whatever it is? What matters most to you about this company? What matters most to you about this event today? What matters most to you about being here? You came here for a reason. And if you start to ask people questions like that, boy, you get to know someone that you might have known for 10 years, and you know them better in 5 minutes. By asking little questions like that. What's most important to you? What else? What else? What else? You start to unravel, because they'll give you the generic answers, but when you keep asking them, they unravel that onion and start to get to what really matters. And then if you had to rank it, which would be the most important one, and what you've just done is you've elicited their driving value. What they would be willing to spend the most time, energy, and money to attain. It's a feeling. At the end of the day, we're emotion junkies. We want to feel security. We want to feel power. We want to feel importance. We want to have adventure. A lot of us have ADD, adventure deficit disorder. We're just not having enough fun. Because we're work. Right? So being able to pause in your life and say, all right, this is what I've done this first part of my life. What's the next chapter going to be? When you start to operate at that level, then you can, these are some of the things that will get you there. Right? So how do you develop some EQ? I'm going to go through this real quick. First, you develop the self-awareness. It's the first piece of it all the time. So how are you coming across to others? It's an interesting question. You can't answer it because you don't know. Now you have to go and find out and see yourself through the eyes of another. Then we start to focus on building that empathy, creating that desire to care. Because that intrinsic motivation is the strongest driver of human productivity. If you want to maximize potential and productivity and then ultimately profits, you got to cause people to feel cared about, and then they will return the favor. And then the third one is those verbal and nonverbal communication skills. Again, I had said before that the words you use create feelings and emotions inside of you. So let me give you a customer service example. I remember I was here, 10 years ago, I went and trained all the customer service reps for NIPSCO. A guy named Bob. And if you haven't had another one in a while, I'm available. Just saying. But I remember that how you say things really influences the way that people feel. So let me ask you a question. Let's just say that you're my customer and you just said, hey, thank you so much. And I go, no problem. What's the word you just heard? Interesting. Or what if I want to be cool? Hey, no worries. What's the word you just heard? Interesting. Or if I say, my pleasure. What did you just hear? Now, what's the last feeling you want your customer to associate with you when they're walking away? Problems, worries, or pleasure? Interesting. So the next time no problem falls out of your face, I want you to go, my pleasure. Okay? A simple little twist on the words that we use. I'll go to companies and I'll say, we'll do a relaxation program, and I'm saying, you feeling better? And they're like, yeah, we're a lot less stressed. Now you could say less stress all day long and you're going to feel stressed. Why? Because it's the word you hear. Instead of, I feel more calm, more relaxed, more at ease. People are so focused on what they're trying to get away from that we focus more on avoiding pain than going after pleasure. Remember, your mind is very much like a GPS system. You got to plug in the coordinates for where you want to go, and then your mind will help you go there. But what we do instead is we type in all the places we don't want to end up, hoping somehow by default we arrive. That doesn't make any sense at all. But people tend to focus more on what they're afraid of than what they want. If you could just start to shift that and think of your mind as a GPS, you just ask yourself, you take the first breath in, because that gets you more resourceful. You got to slow down. Anxiety cannot exist in slow motion. You have to speed up to feel anxious. And the speeding up might just be in your head. You have to use your breathing, change your physiology. It will calm you down. It will slow you down. Once you get more resourceful physically, then you can ask yourself a better question. What's the outcome that I want? How do I want this to end up? What feeling do I want to experience? And what could I do to cause that feeling? What feelings do I want to cause in my customers, in my employees? And how do I move towards that? How do I cause those feelings in them? And that gives you power because now you're living with intention. I call it mindfulness at work. And it gives you a feeling of control, which is one thing when we speed up we feel that we're out of. So it allows you to feel more resourceful and in control again. It really is how we look at things more than anything else. So I want to leave you with one more quick little story, and then I'll open it up for any questions you might have. Oh, I forgot about this. This is real quick. Sometimes people will say, well, do you have any metrics on this stuff? Do you have any hard numbers? So there's a company in Indianapolis that I've been working with for the last couple of years, teaching the emotional mastery part of it. Now, they were a successful company before I met them. But they're in-house. On paper, they were very successful, but inside there was a lot of stress, a lot of tension. So there was a question on their employee satisfaction survey, and there was many of them. I just took one. Management considers employees when making decisions. 46%. They said, yeah, that's very low. 46% of the company said, yeah, they don't consider us. They don't trust their leaders. We don't trust them. I don't think they care about us. The national average is 60%, which I think is low. But when we talk about customer service, and everybody goes, ugh, that's not really a surprise, is it? So then we started doing this emotional intelligence training. We made leaders transactional, or transformational instead of just transactional. And what happened is they started really caring about people. And in the last 3 years, that score went up to 96%. That was the last one. They did the survey in January. We got it back in April. 50% increase. That's substantial in any statistics class, right? And that is simply a result of applying the things that we've been talking about today. That also produced millions of extra dollars. They've been growing at a rate of 9% annually when the national average is 3%. That's the competitive advantage. It's not some new marketing system. It's not some new software or technology. It's developing the human technology inside of us. So what I always like to remind people, if you want to see a change in the world, be a change in the world. I'm going to quote Michael Jackson, start with the man or woman in the mirror. Right? Always start there, because that's where your greatest breakthrough is. You have the ability to look at any situation any way you want. I've worked with people who have been through the worst things you can imagine, and I have seen amazing breakthroughs with the meaning that they gave it and how they used it to build their life. When I'm out, I'm not in the Midwest, I like to use farming metaphors. You know, and I say that a lot of my farming friends and family, you know, they always told me that, you know, things grew better in manure. So you can't get away from the manure in your life, so you might as well use it to grow your future. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we always have the ability to look at things the way that we want. There's this little boy, and he sees this baseball, and he has this stick he's been walking around with, so he throws this baseball way in the air, and he swings, oh, and he misses. Whew. So he picks that ball up again, he throws that ball even higher, he swings, whoa, and he misses again. It's like, oh. He picks that ball up one more time, he steadies. He throws that ball way up in the air, he's waiting, he's got his eye on it, he swings, whoa, totally misses it again. And then he stops, and he thinks, and he goes, wow, what a pitcher. Okay? We have the ability to look at any situation in a way that empowers us. And that's my message for you today. So, do you have any questions? Anything that you'd like to ask about human behavior? Anything I've talked about up here? I'd love to answer any questions you might have. I would strongly recommend you ask now because I'm not charging you by the hour. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Now I told Anna there and Jeannie there was going to be a couple questions, so somebody asked something. What'd you learn from this? What's the thing that you learned more than anything else? Okay, what's the thing you learned more than anything else from today? What's one thing that you learned that you'll take away? Slow down. That's right. Use more positive language. Pay attention to the words you're using. Excellent. Breathe. Open to change. Things go better in manure. Yeah. That's right. It starts with you. Success is in the people. These are powerful messages. Okay, one more. Yes. Respect one another, and that starts by respecting ourselves. So if you catch yourself being a bully, you got to shift that and love that little boy or girl inside. Because if you're not doing it, no one else will either. Yeah. How do you help blamers with self-awareness? Let me answer that second, okay? Because we had a question over here. So, yes, sir.
So why did you move to Indianapolis from the garden capital of America, Hobart, and the region?
Because you can't be a star in your own backyard. Work brought me there, actually. Yeah, so I was doing a lot of trainings and people kept coming from Indy, so I thought maybe I should go there, and ended up staying. Yeah, good question, thank you. But I'm glad to be back. Yeah. Now, how do you bring awareness to a blamer? The first thing you do when someone's blaming is instead of trying to get them to stop blaming, find some way to help them feel appreciated and validated. Because that takes the pressure off, and then they don't have to be so blaming. Because all they're trying to do is protect their ego. So if you can find a way to get on their side and validate a point that they have, you might not even have to agree. You can not just respect the person. You might not respect the behavior, but find a way to respect the person. It creates stronger rapport. And when they feel appreciated, because what we do is we dig in deep and we try to be right instead of being happy. Dr. Phil said that. You know, you want to be right or you want to be happy, and you know what people pick more than most. And so it's a mistake, because the goal is to be happy, and that makes you right more of the time. Because if you have to be right all the time, you walk around making everybody else wrong, and that's not going to get you to the promised land. Amen? Amen. All right, very good. Does that help? Absolutely. All right, yes?
Could you say a little more about creating reciprocity debt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, man. So the way you create reciprocity debt is you keep helping people without any strings attached. You keep doing things that help them feel appreciated. You keep doing things that help them out. You keep doing things that help people feel cared for. And then you're doing so many nice things, they feel like maybe they owe you something, they want to give it back. So I remember there was a friend of mine in Valparaiso, and I kept helping him with different things, and I helped his team, and I was really helping him to grow in the company, which he has. But I kept doing him favors. And I said, I'm going to give you this audio program, and I want you to use it with your team. And he said, this is great. And he says, I'm going to pay you. I'm like, no, you don't have to. And he says, oh. And so I get an email, and it was supposed to go to his wife. And he accidentally sent it to me. And it says, remind me to get a check. This Tim Shurr keeps doing all these things. I got to pay this guy. And I thought, okay. So, but that's not the goal. The goal isn't to do it with strings attached because people can tell. They can feel it. It's an energy thing. If you're doing it because you're making a deposit into your emotional account, or you're making it into your wealth account, the more you care for others, the more you're going to get it back. Now, the secret is to remind yourself that you might not get it back from that person. And that's okay. You'll get it back from those around you. Does that help? Yeah. You're welcome. My pleasure. Yeah, I got time for one more. That's a wrap. Thank you very much.